Before I get started, let me introduce Dallas Neville of the U.S. Marshal Service. Really appreciate Dallas being able to attend this press conference. What we'd like to do in hosting this press conference today is to make sure that we're pretty clear about the initiative and the operation that took place yesterday. Yesterday's operation should be viewed clearly as a continued part of our investigation, the homicide investigation that took place this spring. It should not be considered a roundup or a random roundup. Yesterday, the Madison Police Department teamed up with several federal agencies, the U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, U.S. Marshals, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, also known as ATF, United States Attorney's Office of the Western District. We teamed up to take 11 foreign-born gang members off the streets of Dane County. The arrests during this joint operations were consistent with what we have stated in the past. We are focused towards removing violent street gang members from the streets of Madison. It is a matter of public safety. And we will continue to work with our federal law enforcement partners to diminish potential threats while maintaining public trust. The operation came in direct response to the April 28, 2010 gang-related murder of Antonio Perez, age 19, of Madison. In the wake of that homicide, the Madison Police Department started gathering intelligence indicating that there could be retaliatory gang violence. We have been vigilant since that time, working to thwart public safety threats posed by gang members. The individuals that were targeted were gang members primarily based upon NCIC standards, have been involved in gang activity in the Madison area based upon officer reports and criminal informants, and many of them had extensive criminal histories. There is something that I want to make sure is really clear, though. This operation in no way changes our approach, our philosophy, and our policy towards working with Madison's immigrant community. We will continue to strike a balance of public safety, maintaining public trust with our immigrant community, informing them of the things that we're engaging in and involving in the things and the operations that we are engaged in. Number three, we will continue to work with our law enforcement partners while prioritizing our limited police resources. I'd like to thank the community because this was indeed a number of people in the community were contacted regarding this initiative, this operation. I want to thank those that were involved in this. I also want to thank our law enforcement partners because we could not have pulled this off with the amount of cooperation and planning and coordination that took place, which was led by Captain Jim Wheeler, which you'll hear from in just a minute. But this was a department-wide effort, and it extensively involved our crime prevention gang unit. So at this particular time, I'd like to turn it over to Captain Jim Wheeler. I will be here to answer questions regarding this operation, but Jim will get more into the specifics of what took place yesterday. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Captain Jim Wheeler. I'm the captain of the investigative support section. I was in charge of developing a plan in response to the gang-related murder of Antonio Perez. This plan included more than just enforcement action. I want to point out that in June, when we started getting information of retaliation and threats between each gang, we did send our crime prevention gang unit out into the streets in order to contact members of each gang and to specifically contact a target, a family who was targeted for retaliation. After that, we started getting, still started getting more information where we believed that it was time to take action. So this plan was, looking at all possibilities to stop the violence, and also being aware that we also are out there to help. When the plan was developed, I met with our law enforcement partners from federal agencies, and we just started the plan, talk about how we were going to do this. We decided to have teams of officers, about 5 teams, 60 officers total, that were briefed at our East Police District. We then went out and made contact with all the individuals who were targeted. I want to be very specific and reiterate what the chief said. This was narrowly focused on 15 individuals. The list that we were targeting actually got bigger and it got smaller as we got more information. It went as high as over 20 individuals who were targeted, and we ended up with 15. And that was from the good work of our crime prevention gang unit, who did a lot of background on the individuals. And we wanted to make sure that these individuals were the ones who were what we believe to be a danger to the community. Out of those 15 individuals, we were able to contact 11, which ICE has under detention for administrative removal. So with that, I can't go into too much of the plan, but I do want to note that during our briefing, we did spell out what the ground rules would be. We would treat everyone with respect. We would go and we would only ask the immigration status of our targets. Anyone else in the house will not be targeted. And we did have prior information that other folks in our target residents had an illegal status, and they were home. Some were home when we made contact at the residence. They were not asked their immigration status, and they were not taken into custody. The whole operation ended at about noon, and we just moved on from there. So I can answer any questions if you would like. Just also want to just point out the board over here that Officer Moore will explain. These are some of the individuals that were taken into custody, and we can't show their faces because these were not arrests, but administrative proceedings. But as you can see, the tattoos indicating gang involvement.
What we're looking at are tattoos of several individuals that were, we use the words taken into custody on those administrative proceedings. And what you're going to see are most of the tattoos that you see here are gang tattoos from the Clanton 14 gang. To give you a little history on the Clanton 14 gang, it's a very old, actually LA-based gang. It predates a group called the Mexican Mafia. They actually originated at 14th and Clanton out in LA, and they're big in 3 different areas in the United States. One is California, the other is Milwaukee, and the third is Madison, Wisconsin. We had a sizable group of these individuals here. So what you're going to see is C14th Street in this tattoo, which means Clanton 14th Street. Now these are Serrano's gangs. Now Serrano's gangs normally would have the number 13, and you'll see the number 13 in some of these tattoos because they're Southern California gangs. They pay allegiance to the Mexican Mafia. Because the Mexican Mafia, when you look at it in Spanish, La M is the name for the Mexican Mafia, so M is the 13th letter of the alphabet, and that's why you'll see 13. This group is so old because they predate that Mexican Mafia group that they're allowed to use the number 14 in their name, which would be something that you wouldn't see in a Serrano's gang, just to get that out of the way. So you can see the 14 being a common theme in a lot of the tattoos that you see here. With this particular tattoo right here, you can see a lot of times our Latino gang members will have the nickname tattooed on the back of the neck. And you'll see this name right here is an individual that had the street name of Travieso. And you can see that sometimes with an E, they will turn the E and make it a 3. And you have to know how to read this stuff. And a lot of our guys have experience in reading this. And you can see the words Clanton on the back. You'll see C14 Street, they use the Roman numerals a lot. X1V being 14. And another common theme you'll see in these tattoos are the 3 dots. The 3 dots represent Mi Vida Loca, or my crazy life, translated into English, because a lot of the gang members know that being involved in gang activity can sometimes be crazy. You'll see the rosaries. We see a lot of our gang members wearing rosaries around their neck, and a lot of times the rosaries will be the color of the gang's color. And a lot of the time you'll have the number of dots would be a 13. You have 13 dots representing the 13, or the representation of the allegiance to La M. The praying hands is another common theme that you'll see in gang members' tattoos, basically praying for protection and just sort of as an apology for the crazy life that they live. Another common theme, and this particular tattoo is very interesting because this tattoo has the name Little Puppet. Little Puppet was the nickname or the street name of Antonio Perez, which was the victim in the homicide. And you'll see that this tattoo is like a memorial to Antonio Perez. And one of the things you see in the background, which looks like the Capitol here in Madison, Wisconsin, you'll also see this particular hat that he's wearing, which is the same hat that's here. A lot of our gang members have this hat. This represents the old school cholo or zoot suiter type look from the old days when gangs first started out on the West Coast. So there's a lot of tradition in a lot of the tattoos that you'll see here. You'll see the C for Clantone in this particular tattoo. So a lot of it's very interesting. You also see the marijuana leaf is a common theme that you'll see in West Coast gang members' tattoos. The 3 dots next to the eye, that's a very common theme that we see with our gang members. And tattooing in the webbing of the hand. A lot of gang members, no matter if they're from the East Coast, West Coast, or the Midwest, a lot of Chicago-based gang members, you'll see tattooing in the webbing of the hand, even all the way down into Texas. So basically, and then sometimes you'll see things like a tattoo of a loved one's name right here, or a nickname like, I believe this is Sancho, a nickname right here. A lot of times they will tattoo nicknames, but one of the common themes that you'll see is the type of writing, that Old English type of writing. A lot of our Southern California and even our West Coast LA-based gang members will have that old school Old English type writing. That's the type of writing that they prefer to have, and it's kind of like a tradition. Some of these tattoos, you can clearly see that these aren't professionally done, and you can see that this one is probably a homemade tattoo. We did come across in one of the situations where we went and contacted an individual. On this operation that we did see a tattoo, a homemade tattoo gun, which is the type of thing that you would see done in prison, where it would be homemade. And so we know that some of our gang members were actually tattooing other gang members. So some of the art you'll see is original art from the gang members themselves. They draw it up and then they put it on. Sometimes they will go to a tattoo shop and have it put on. And this one in the center is an excellent representation of just the type of shading that you'll see. And then you see the C14 Street, and the SS right here in this tattoo stands for South Side, because these individuals consider themselves to be Southsiders. When we talk about Southsiders, we're talking about going all the way back to California during the time where gangs decided to pick sides. If you were south of Bakersfield, California, you were considered a Southerner. If you were north of Bakersfield, you were considered a Northerner or a Norteño. So with the blue colors are definitely something that you will see. Again, the colors aren't as prevalent as they used to be. It's not as big a deal, but gang members wearing the wrong colors at the wrong time can get them into trouble. So, do we have any questions about anything that I've explained so far?
When you say,
Want to save that?
You want to talk to, and any of the people who can address questions. Sandy?
Officer Moore, what's the impact of these people who were taken off the street? How key were they in this gang? And the fact that they're not on the streets here anymore, how big a deal is it that these 11 were taken off the streets?
I think it's a big deal that they were taken off of the streets. Based on the information that we've been able to collect and what we know from and our informants on the street, that the individuals that we had taken were all adults. So being that they were adults, they had a little bit more influence in the gang, and some of the individuals were actually leaders of the gang. So our gangs, especially this particular gang, was organized. They had meetings every Sunday. They collected dues, and the dues that they collected were put towards buying drugs to distribute on the street, and also for buying weapons. So they had collected quite a bit of money, especially since the death of Antonio Perez. We had information that they were trying to amass more money so they could buy weapons, so that they could do a retaliation. So definitely meetings. They had a hierarchy, and these individuals that we targeted were key individuals within the gang. I would say that hopefully it will lead them to be a bit disorganized for a while, so that we won't have to worry so much about retaliation or their movements, and we can move on to another group that may be causing problems within the city.
Officer, do you know when this retaliation was planned for? I mean, the murder obviously happening in April. Was this something they were sort of gearing up for to happen soon?
They were gearing up for it. We didn't know an exact date. So we thought it could happen at any time. There was one particular time when we felt it would happen during a certain weekend based on the information we were getting, and that was the time that Captain Wheeler talked about, where we were out on the street actually going into the gang members' homes and contacting them and asking them what was going on, and just basically getting information and telling them, hey, you know, we know what's going on, and just to let you know that we are paying attention, and this is not a good thing for you guys to be doing, and just you know, giving them the feeling that they couldn't operate anonymously within the city, that we knew who they were and we had information on them.
Can you say what weekend that was?
I cannot remember the exact weekend that that was. I think we have information. I think it was in June. It was in June, so it may have coincided with the information that we had about something happening in Verona. It might have been that during that time.
Officer, if you were making contact with these individuals during that weekend, for example, what was the tipping point? Why did you feel the need to go beyond putting them on notice that you knew about them and you were watching them to actually taking them into custody on an immigration hold?
Ongoing information that they were in the process of attempting to acquire weapons in order to effect that plan.
Could I also add to that, Tony? For us to put together an operation like this and working with federal law enforcement authorities, it's a tremendous amount of work putting it together. And we're going to do it. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. As you well know, these things tend to spiral out of control in communities, creating community fear. What we're trying to do here is approach this in a very surgical, targeted manner, pulling together, coordinating our resources. We had, as Captain Wheeler said, I mean, when you talk about having 60 law enforcement personnel focusing on a particular effort, you can't do that every day. So that's part of the reason. And we had been looking at doing something like this for several months. By the way, this is not the first time that we have worked with federal law enforcement officers in something similar to this. It is consistent with what we've done in the past. I think it was about a year and a half ago, we had a similar operation, but different issues there with the Southside locals. So.
Can you update us?
Those 60 officers were Madison police officers?
The majority of them were Madison police officers.
Can you update us on the search for the two folks that you believe are the suspects in the murder investigation itself?
Hey, is it gonna be better for you folks if they're seated or standing? Okay, so if we could just.
Slide this back?
Yeah, why don't we slide this back? And Jim, would that be a good question for you, Captain Wheeler?
Or more question for the detective who's not here.
Let's do this. At this particular time, it is an ongoing investigation. This particular press conference is focused towards the initiative that took place yesterday. What we have done is that we have provided the pictures over on the wall of the two suspects that are still at large. The lieutenant that's over that particular investigation is here. If there are any questions that he could field, he will, but it is an ongoing investigation.
Is there any information that you've gathered from the folks that you've now taken off the streets that might be helpful in that investigation, I guess is the question.
I haven't read all the reports yet, so, but I don't know if I would give out that information at this point because it is an ongoing investigation.
I mean, generally, we knew that those two individuals were in Texas at one time. One of them, we thought, had probably gone over the border into Mexico, and at this point, it's quite possible that both of them have gone over the border into Mexico, although their status is really unknown at this time.
Was there any consideration given to identifying some of the affiliated gang members of the suspects? And was there any concern that since there had been alleged homicidal violence by this other gang, that their affiliates were going to be up to no good as well?
Yeah, Tony, I mean, this is still an ongoing investigation. So we are still working on this, and we are going to be proceeding with more investigative techniques in order to put a stop to this.
For Captain Wheeler or Lester over there, you mentioned in the release that Perez was the founder of the Clan 14. Does that mean the Madison group of the 14, or can you kind of explain what that means?
That would be
Musical chair.
basically, he was the individual who brought the Clan 14 gang into Madison. he went into Milwaukee because originally wanted to be a Southside local gang member, and because he couldn't do that, he went into Milwaukee and started hanging out with Clantone 14 gang members. Now our gangs do network like we do, and so the Southside locals and the Clantone 14 gang in Milwaukee were very close with one another, and they were working together. And he went there. He got acquainted with those guys, jumped into that particular group, and then came to Madison and started his own group here.
When was that?
That was quite a few years ago. I would say it was more than 3 years ago, I believe. I can't tell you the exact date, but it was probably
To Madison?
that he's actually a Madison. He was actually a Madison resident that was hanging out in Milwaukee, and then went to Milwaukee, got jumped into that particular gang in Milwaukee, and then brought that group, started his own a wing of that group here in Madison.
About 3 years ago?
I would say it's probably about, I think he was still in high school, so yeah, it was probably maybe 3 to 4 years ago.
So none of these members that you've taken off the street here are facing any charges in the city of Madison at all? They'll all just be deported for this?
Well, there is a ongoing investigation on one of the individuals who was a Chicano Pride Association gang member, and so who is different from this particular group, but that one is ongoing, and so at this point I can't really comment on that.
But of the rest of them, they aren't facing any charges here, they would just be
At
deported?
this point, I couldn't tell you. I haven't read the reports. Like the captain said, we don't know exactly. I myself don't know exactly what's going on with these individuals. At this point, I couldn't answer that.
Was that the primary motivation for Perez's killing, his status as some sort of a gang kingpin?
No, there were ongoing issues between those two particular groups that started probably sometime in 2009, maybe even before that. It was back and forth arguing and small confrontations between those particular groups that went on for quite some time, and then which basically culminated into there being a homicide because of the different gang affiliations.
I'd also like to mention that in your media packets, you'll see that there's also a news release from ICE in there. Gail Montenegro, who's out of Chicago, is their media contact. She really can give you a better idea of where these individuals stand as far as what's going to be happening with them next. Really, they're in ICE custody at this point, not in Madison Police or Dane County custody.
Can you tell us how many members, how large you see this group as being in Madison? The C-14 that was targeted here, that you took 11 people out, how many more gang members do you believe to be in the community? And what about the Milwaukee connection? How many members are there? And are there concerns that people from Milwaukee are gonna now come down to Madison to
Okay.
take
Well-
up for the ones and carry out their plans here?
Well, I can tell you this. That was probably our largest Latino gang, based on the information that we had. Again, they were still affiliated with the Milwaukee group. The Milwaukee gang members were coming here quite often. And so Milwaukee did its own operation with this particular group, so I'm not sure how many that they have left. I know that during that operation, I think quite a few of them came here for a short period of time to escape some of the pressure that was being put on them in Milwaukee. But as far as whether they'll come here and do whatever they're going to do, we don't know that at this time. I think based on just working, being out in the street and working, that's something that we're going to definitely be looking for. And as far as how many are left, I couldn't tell you at this point. I think there's still a few individuals left that we'll again continue to monitor and continue to look out for. When I say monitor, it's not just about going out and following. A lot of these individuals we're doing intervention work with, and we were working with Neighborhood Intervention Program, Frank Rodriguez, Aaron Perry, and actually working on intervention with a lot of these kids and trying to turn them in a different direction. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it takes a long time. It's not an instant process. It's like working with someone who's addicted to drugs or alcohol. I mean, sometimes you're going good and then you have a setback, and then you're going good for a while. It's something that you need people who have patience to work with young people in order to get them
turned around and making better decisions. So that's why we partner with a lot of different groups in Madison to do that.
So are the majority of the members remaining in the community in this group, are they juveniles?
Many of them are juveniles, yes, under the age of 18.
I was also going to add, Officer Moore was talking about the pressure put on in Milwaukee. If you go to ICE's website, you'll see that this same operation, a similar operation, say, took place in Chicago and Milwaukee earlier this year. And you can see how many gang members were taken into custody by ICE in those operations. So this is really the third type of operation of its kind in the Midwest, first time for Madison.
It's been mentioned several times that this was specifically to target people that you believe are violent, not target people that have illegal status in general. How big of an obstacle was that throughout this investigation to get people to talk and to get information is that they were worried you were going to be worried of taking their status into consideration for everyone?
I think for us, for our particular unit, that's not hard because we've been working with people in the community for quite a long period of time. And we work with parents, you know, a lot of the parents of some of these guys. We were working with these guys when they were juveniles. And so they know us. They're very familiar with us. They know how we work. They know how we operate. And they know for us that's not an issue. And for a lot of the parents whose kids were getting recruited, they were asking us to do something about it. And I think this is the type of thing that they were asking us to do, you know, as well as doing intervention and prevention type work. So I think we had a good rapport and a good working relationship with that community.
I should also, and maybe Captain Wheeler could address this, that we were in contact with key members of the Latino community yesterday while this was happening. Could you maybe talk about that? So we were, to answer your question, we were very concerned about the impact of this in the general immigrant community. And that's why we're being very careful to let people know exactly what happened. And I think Captain Wheeler can tell you a little bit about the steps that were taken even as this operation was going on yesterday.
Yeah, as soon as the operation started, when I knew that the teams were at their locations, and this was for officer safety reasons, once I knew they were at their locations, that's when I gave word to the members, leaders in the Latino community that we were conducting an operation. We made sure that we let people know that it was specifically focused on certain individuals, that it was not a roundup, that we had a narrow focus on this.
What was your response to that?
Well, we had someone in our command post who was monitoring phones that we would probably receive phone calls on, and we also was listening to La Movida. And we also, you know, just our officers who were in the Hispanic community, you know, trying to ascertain if they were hearing anything. Our biggest concern was the reaction from the community, and we did not want to have a lot of fear out there. So, you know, the plan was if we start hearing things, we would have to take care of that.
Excuse me, how they have the members of these gangs, how old is adults and
What they were, I think they're between ages 18 and 24, but I want to make a point that we did not target juveniles, even though there were juveniles that were close. And I think Lester Moore said it well. They're working with these kids, and they're trying to change their lives and trying to do some sort of intervention. So juveniles were specifically taken off the list. And, you know, just to reiterate how much time went into this, you know, like I said before, people were on the list and we took people off the list for various reasons. I mean, we went back and forth on how big the list will actually be. And a lot of that was because we wanted to make sure that who we were targeting were the correct people and that we weren't going to be indiscriminate and just start taking anybody off the street, even just because they were associated with the gang.
Captain Wheeler, for you or for Officer Moore, as a result of this sting, what do you believe the mentality will be of the remaining C-14 gang members? Will they take a posture that they need to do something for their brothers, or do you think that they will feel as if they are being watched, their actions are being monitored, and they better fly right? What do you think the mentality is going to be?
Well, I would hope that the mentality is that we will not tolerate gang activity in the city of Madison. So I hope that message would get out there, you know, to the community at large and also to the gang members.
Let me just add to that, because, Tony, when you bring that up, and, you know, we're not here concerned about what they think. Okay, this is a city, and we're here about providing public safety. What you've heard from Captain Wheeler, what you've heard from Officer Moore, is that we have a multifaceted approach. We've been working with the community. The reason why we think, and I believe that we've had a positive response, is that this was not a surprise. We've had ongoing dialogue on an initiative possibly like this for some time. When you heard me say that we try to strike a balance, I've said that consistently. Public safety first, working with our immigrant communities to build and maintain trust, working with federal law enforcement officials, as well as prioritizing our limited resources. That is the way that we're going to strike a balance. But at this particular time, we're here to work with folks, but we're not here to say that they're going to dictate how we feel and how we react.
Is this a different type of approach than you can take with other gangs, specifically because these gang members are foreign born? I mean, it seems as if you had, American gangs that were American citizens, you couldn't take this kind of preventative action. You'd have to wait until some sort of a crime was committed to
Sure.
take them off the streets.
Sure.
Is this a different way of approaching a gang that
Sure.
happens to be foreign-born members?
With each gang, you have different strategies and different responses that you can put in place. We always start with having a multifaceted response. Suppression, intervention, prevention, those are the basic ones. But in terms of what we had going on here, after a period of time of trying a number of different strategies, we believe that this strategy was necessary to intervene into something that we felt could save a life here. We had retaliation going back. We already had a homicide earlier this year, so we felt it was important that we take these kind of steps.
Is this something where, as a department, you contacted ICE and said, we've got a great reason for you to do Community Shield here, will you come help us?
Yeah, we've been in contact with ICE on an ongoing basis. We're not in contact with ICE, but U.S. Marshals, all of the people that I talked about earlier, the federal agencies, we have an ongoing relationship with. So they knew, they had an idea of what was going on. Captain Wheeler, our crime prevention gang unit, are in constant contact with our federal partners.
Can you say who the target was in this case? Is it family members of the suspects in the homicide? Is it general
you guys
members
wanna-
of that gang? Or are the potential targets being, monitored or protected at all by your department continuing?
Let Captain Wheeler talk a bit about that.
Yeah, when we went out on the street in June, it was basically information. I'm not going to go into who the specific target was, but I could just tell you families were being targeted, and the information we received was that family members, babies were not off limits. So we did go and make a lot of contacts out in the street.
Are they still being, or is there still any protection by your department of these potential targets now, even after this has happened, because there are still maybe juvenile members of this gang remaining in the community?
No, we're not doing any further protection. We did, when we were out, we did contact the people who needed to be contacted and inform them that they were targets.
Would it be your hope or expectation that the action that took place here would send, for lack of a better word, a chilling effect or an eye-opener, or be helpful in the efforts to do the intervention and suppression with the young people that you're, working on? In other words, it would seem, if they don't turn their ways around, they could very easily get deported like these other players here.
Right, I believe it will be a deterrent effect. And what's great about the Crime Prevention Gang Unit and NIP, they have the resources that when people do reach out for help, that the resources are there that can be provided for them.
Captain Wheeler, can I answer that?
Yeah.
Some of the young folks that we were just talking about don't want to be in the gang. They don't. But a lot of the older individuals will influence them and pressure them into doing things that they don't want to do. And we've talked to several of the young folks, not just this particular gang, but many gangs that want to get out. But it's a hard thing to do when everyone that you talk to, everyone that's in your life is a part of that gang. Even some have family members. We're looking at third-generation gang members now. So it's very difficult for us to try to get these folks into programs or get them into a position where they can make a clean break. So that's why it's difficult. That's why it takes a long period of time. By removing a lot of these individuals, then that pressure is no longer there, because some of the young ones was probably being called out, hey, let's go out and do this. And there's a pressure because in these particular gangs, and many gangs, if you don't do what's asked of you, you get a violation. And a violation could be something like paying money, but most of the time the violation is a physical punishment, which is getting beat up by several members of your gang. So this will help take the pressure, I think, off of some of the younger gang members and allow them to have more choices as to what they can do. And maybe this will say, hey, you know what? Maybe they'll say, hey, this particular group that we're involved in looks like it's, going by the wayside. I'm going to get out now. And so it could be a vehicle for them to be able to do something different with their life, and that's what we're hoping.
While you have the microphone, what can you tell us about any type of gang-related activity that the C-14s were involved with prior to their kind of massing for weapons to retaliate Perez's death?
I think
were they, committing crimes as, gang motivated, or however you would define it?
Absolutely, because in order to be labeled as a gang, you have to fit the definition of a gang, which is 3 or more individuals with a common identifying sign, symbol, or name, whose individuals are either collectively or individually involved in criminal activity. So that basically separates the Green Bay Packers from the Gangster Disciples, okay? So, that common identifying sign, symbol, or name, but as a whole, the Green Bay Packers don't engage in criminal activity. So to be considered a gang, you have to be involved in some type of criminal activity. So just about anything you can think of, criminal damage to property with graffiti and substantial batteries, probably financial crimes, retail theft, sexual assault, just about anything that you can think of that individuals would be involved in. Now, some of that crime could be, as a group, and some of it could be individuals involved in that particular crime. But the reason that it's important is because the gang mindset is a criminal mindset. So, that's the whole purpose of being involved in a gang. In the beginning, a lot of young people don't know that. They don't receive that. It's like being involved in a cult. You get this package and they say, hey, this is great. You ought to be a part of this. It's a wonderful thing. And then when you get in, you finally realize what it's all about. And once they're in, a lot of times it's too late. And let's face it, one of our gang members told us being involved in gang activity is like negative pleasure. They know it's wrong, but it's fun and they like it. So that's why they have a lot of them. A majority of gang members have that laugh now and cry later tattoo. It means I'm going to laugh now, have all the fun I want, do all the stuff that I want, and I'm going to worry about the consequences later. And I'll cry about it later when, I wind up shot or in jail or whatever. That's the mentality of a great portion of gang members.
Can you speak at all to the amount of group criminal activity that was associated with the M14s? I understand here's a gang, here are the individual members who may be committing crimes. What about is concerted activity? Are you aware that there was a lot, a little?
I would say that at this point, I don't want to speak to that because we're ongoing intelligence that we're attempting to gather. So at this point, I really don't want to speak to that. But I can tell you that, they were involved in a lot of activity. And, it wasn't just, some of the things that happened just recently that brought them to our attention. There were many things that were going on that some of the stuff that we're still looking into and investigating.
And you had said earlier that the C-14s were in LA, were in Milwaukee, were in Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Are they in other places, or is Madison one of the 3
These are
hotbeds for this gang?
Those are the 3 locations that we know of that they have a large group presence. Now, there are probably C-14 gang members that have moved to different parts of the country, and there are individuals there. Say your family moved from Los Angeles to another community for a better life, and then they drag the whole family, and one of the family members is a gang member. So that individual could be in another part of the country just hanging out by themselves and maybe joining up with a different group other than C-14. But we had a concentration. We had an organized group of Clantone 14 gang members here with a hierarchy that met, that had dues, that had laws, bylaws, and rules governing them. So I would say those 3 different locations were places where you had a highly organized group of Clantone 14.
Is there a part of town that they're more prevalent in, that there was concentration?
Not, our city is different than a lot of cities. Our gang members are spread out. We don't have gang members controlling certain parts of town, because of our diversity, we're very different. A lot of people look at television and they see, or they watch Gangland and they see that way gang members behave in different parts in the world. Madison has its own flavor. You'll see things in Madison that you won't see in Los Angeles or New York, and that's just the Madison flavor of gang activity. Doesn't mean that it's not real gang activity. We use this term wannabe a lot, and people throw that around, and I think we get in trouble with that because wannabes are gonnabes, or they are. So I would say that our flavor is just different here. So no, I don't see any gang members controlling any geographical areas of the city at this time.
I know Officer Moore's talking about the city. Note in your media packet too that there are 3 other Dane County communities where the operation went yesterday. So I think for people to think that this is contained to Madison, they'd be fooling themselves. It's really a problem that's much more widespread. I think Officer Moore would attest to that.
Absolutely.